Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Dental Handoff. I'm Dr. Kelly Tanner, and I have with me today Sheena Hinson. Sheena, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
I don't know if you guys have met Sheena before. I met her first, what meeting was that? Greater New York, Sheena?
Was it there or was it Dykema? Who knows?
Yeah.
It's a blur.
All of the things begin to blur. But what I loved about Sheena is her energy, her positivity, and the way that she was present when she spoke with me, because that, I think, it's hard to find sometimes, especially at conferences, because we're so distracted. So Sheena, I'm delighted to get time with you. The question I always start with is, why hygiene? Did you choose it? Did it choose you?
That's a great question. Hygiene, I did not grow up as a little girl like, oh, I want to be a dental hygienist, right? I had considered going into orthodontics, actually. And then it was like, okay, well, I'll do hygiene first. And then, life happens and here we are. But yeah, hygiene, I don't know that I was ever like, oh, I can't wait to be a dental hygienist, but it was obviously a solid career choice. And I enjoyed it. Maybe it's like I enjoyed like the picking around, but really what fueled me as I, grew when I was clinical was just it was like catching up with old friends all day. And I just enjoyed that. But yeah, so it just happened, I guess, in a way.
So you like the relationship part of it?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's cool, because as hygienists, that's what it becomes. Even from the first time you meet someone, they're like, who are you? I was working in an office yesterday and the person was like, why am I not seeing so-and-so today? And I'm like, I promise I'll be nice to you. I was like, just give me a chance. Just give me a chance.
Because you're like winning, like your job is to win people over. And it's, I never ever would have anticipated like that I would also be some sort of therapist and, people handler and, winner over of people. I certainly didn't expect that side of hygiene, but I learned a lot. It was fascinating. Like, you have just such a great sampling of people from all walks of life and all different backgrounds and, different cultures, different families, different, careers. So it was great. It was almost like a mostly one-way podcast for like a decade. Tell me your deepest, darkest secrets. But it's okay. It's by HIPAA. Who knew?
Yeah, it's true. I was thinking too that what I was doing and what we do, and I think what we just subconsciously do, is we're trying to establish trust with people. And it's not just with patients, it's with everyone. And it's such an important, critical aspect of how we relate to others, because so many people come in with fears or preconceived notions about what it's going to be like based on that fear, or PTSD, or whatever that is. And we are the folks who put them at ease. And so I love that you said building those relationships, because the relationship has to come first before really you can help people make changes in their own lives.
That's right. Like Dale Carnegie. Like I think maybe Dale Carnegie, Win Friends and Influence People should be like required reading in dental hygiene school. But it's true. And it's, you're doing it for the right reasons, but you really have to win them over as a friend and, not in a malicious way. And you have influence over these patients, right? And, in our industry, obviously it's like, oh, well, I don't want to push anybody to do anything, or I don't want to sell, or, this thing, but it's like, no, you should have an assumption like of a moral compass, right? And you are influencing them, right? Like, and that's the key. We have to sell, like I have to sell myself to my children every day. With them, I don't win them over quite as easily, but
I know that's right.
It's a big part of, what we do. And I think one of the things that always stayed top of mind for me is these patients don't come in, with their objections or with their sometimes meanness because they hate us. There's a reason they feel that way. And I think really keeping the mindset of like, how can I do what's right versus being right, and
Mm.
keeping some of the most successful hygienists, and I mean, really not just hygiene, but humans and leaders and executives and what have you, they succeed because they focus more on like, what am I trying to accomplish here? It doesn't
Yeah.
matter if I'm right or wrong, but what is my end goal? And I think if you can kind of keep that mindset of, the end game, the future, it makes life so much easier. It's not
Yeah.
in dental there or in life, it's not always black and white. There's a lot of gray area. So I think really just embracing that and staying focused on the end, it makes life a lot easier.
Yeah. And they come to us because they want to know, I mean, if they didn't want to know, they would avoid and they wouldn't come to the dentist, but they want to know if you're finding anything. Just like when I take my car in, I expect that if something's wrong, they're going to tell me. There's nothing worse than leaving and then like your brakes go out and
Yes,
you're like, what? Why didn't anyone tell me? I just had it there the other day. Why didn't anyone
yep,
even bring this up?
you are so right. And in dental, that is the perfect analogy because I think so many times it's like, well, I don't want to tell somebody they need this, and there's an assumption that a patient, you know, can't do something or afford something or they won't
Mhm.
do it. But I think it's really unethical of us as clinicians not to our job is not to make the decision for them. Our job is to let them know what their options are, right?
Mhm.
There's always a conservative option, there's always a more proactive option. And it took me many years to be comfortable in that. Like
Yeah.
Sheena, I felt like I like had to pre-make the decision before I presented anything to them. And it's like, no, my job is to deliver, right? Like I'm not pushing them one way or the other, but especially when it comes to more um, progressive practices, a lot of people are like, "Oh, that's so aggressive. It's unethical," and like, well, it's not really our decision to make.
Right.
It's really our job is to empower them to make the best decision. And it fascinated me when that first clicked in my mind. Patients would, if let's just say they've got a large restoration, and you're like, well, if you wanted to be really conservative, could probably do a large filling. But if you wanted to be more proactive, you could put a crown on it to protect it. And they're like, I'll do anything not to have another broken tooth, or I'll do anything not to need another implant or root canal. And they know that is a more proactive option, but it's their decision. And I
Yeah.
think when you can really embrace that, look, we're just laying it out for them and listen, I think that's when clinical life gets a lot less stressful on the, especially from a treatment standpoint and in life, you know.
Yeah. That's a great perspective. I love the way that you said that. So from your venture from clinical to where you are now, I know that you have experienced some cool things, just listening to Sheena speak. She is such a valuable connector, a person who is always for others, right? And you meet some people sometimes and you just know that they're there as right as rain for you. And Sheena is one of those people. Sheena, how did you get to know all the things that you know? Because you're brilliant.
It was very unintentional. And I think just showing up and making friends and solving problems with no expectation. And I've really built my career helping other people win. So it wasn't exactly mapped out, but it's one of those things that it just happens. But I think in constellations, and I think I like mapping that out and connecting the dots. Like I get some kind of dopamine hit or rush from it. And then I found out that, it can be quite valuable to, to businesses and other people and, kind of painting those pictures. But yeah, it was an accidental process, but it was really a lot of curiosity and figuring out like, what are the problems of the problem solvers? Because there are a lot of amazing people in the industry, of course. And, they are great at what they do, but everybody has something that keeps them up at night. Right. So I think just genuinely wanting to learn that. I learned quite a bit more about dentistry than I even knew was possible. Obviously my clinical and then, the business side of dentistry, never thought that, I would care about that. Who knew I really liked math so much? But it was,
It's shocking when you learn that, isn't it?
right. I'm like, oh, I really enjoy this. Like Excel gives me a spark of joy. But so, just kind of fall into those things. And then that's how I got out of clinical. It wasn't really, planned out long term. It's, if you do something and you do it well and you're passionate about it, people are like, oh, tell me more. How did you do that?
Yeah.
And, they had the right tools, but it's just a matter of like, all right, well, how do I use this? How can I impact change? And, as I went on that journey, figuring out, for a while as a hygienist, I was like, okay, maybe I need to not lead with, oh, I'm a hygienist by trade. Because, it's very easy to be pigeonholed, right? You're a consultant, and a hygienist, you must just do hygiene
Yeah.
consulting. It's like, well, I have a little business acumen and I know who EBITDA is. But it's been a journey. But I think in doing all that and over time, really embracing that my knowledge as a clinician, as a decision maker in, leadership in a practice really equipped me to be able to help, not just people in the industry, but businesses to make sure that they're positioning themselves and quite frankly, that they're delivering something that is addressing a real pain point, right? Like bringing a real needed solution, right, into a practice or into an organization. And I think it was really just that passion that kind of pushed me to continue to learn accidentally end to end. I didn't even know what M&A meant whenever I, first got out of clinical, but here we are.
Yeah. So when you were in clinical, did you start asking different questions? You became curious, and then was a natural progression that you helped the docs that you're working for, and then how did all this transpire of how you grew and what you said yes to and how you acquired the knowledge that you have today?
I would say it was not a beautiful journey earlier on. Now I'm very thankful for what kind of pushed me to grow and, quite frankly, accomplish much more than I even thought possible. There's a quote that says, something about being thankful for those that believed in me before I believed in myself. And I had a boss, and it was a higher end fee for service practice. And I ended up taking over the hygiene department there. And the beautiful thing about, a ideal dental practice is hygiene is not the profit center. So that worked out well for me because there was no prescriptive way, like, oh, here's what you need to do in hygiene. And my boss at the time, I was like, well, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to grow this? And he's like, it's your team, you're empowered. I had been trained to a high level, and he knew that I was more than capable. And I remember when I first wanted to expand the department, and I went in the office and I was like, I think I want to hire another hygienist. Like, is that okay? And he's like, why are you asking me? It's your team. And then, but it was true empowerment. And, obviously I could have fallen on my face, but it was just take it to the next level, take it to the next level. So when I was doing practice consulting, that's why I named my company Up Level. But at the time I hated it. It was so like agonizing because I'm like, tell me what you want me to do. And so I had to figure it out. So it was like, okay, I'm going to take it to the next level. And I think I'm a very like driven individual. If I know like, okay, here's what we're doing, here are our guiding principles, our core values, get it done, like that is where I thrive. And as much as I hated it at the time, that autonomy and empowerment and really trust they had in me allowed me to do what I needed to do to get it done. And it ended up turning out quite well. So we grew multiple six figures and had a very ethically profitable department. And that actually, in the market, people are like, okay, well, what are you doing differently? Because we have our, standards in the industry, but I'm the type, if somebody says, how do you measure profitability on hygiene? The old school way of thinking is, well, 3 times their hourly,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, I either want you to tell me that this is a generalization or I want a formula. And so I called all of the experts that I had been referred to, and they kept telling me the same thing. But I'm like, well, if we're doing more, salivary testing or more, lab procedures that are done in hygiene and so on, that is not like you can grow production, but is that really growing your bottom line?
Mhm.
And so I broke it all down to the galls in Excel, and figured it out. And I was like, okay, we did this much more in production, but we did this much more like in true profitability.
Yeah.
So it was really just that passion of, accomplishing what I was tasked to do, and then having to prove out, well, like, are you really that much more profitable? And maybe a dash of stubbornness. Here we are.
You mean resilience, passion.
Yes, resilience. That sounds much more diplomatic for sure.
So then you did that, and then I know that just from talking to you and knowing you in the industry that you went on into corporate, you've helped other companies, not just business to business and the US, but also globally with this constellation thinking.
Yes,
It almost seems like that when you are sitting there, it's like something pops into your head and you see something and you go, okay, I'm going to connect the dots. Let me bring this back. Is that like what it is?
that is exactly it. I always say I think in constellations, not straight lines. And I feel like I'm pretty good at communication, but sometimes translating those constellations it's an interesting process. But yeah, I think just being fascinated with learning and like I said earlier, that curiosity. So I did several weeks of market immersion in Europe earlier this year, and
Mm.
I think I really like to see, like, okay, what are the similarities? What are the differences? And then, like, okay, well, why is it different? What makes it different? And then figuring out, like, where are the overlaps? Where are the opportunities? So one thing that I noticed, especially with my time in Europe this year, was there are a lot more similarities, I think, than people realize. Um, there's different terminology, right? Like, in the US, like when it comes to practice growth and treatment acceptance, when I was in Europe and they're like, oh no, that is not so important to us. We are more like motivational interviewing and this and that. But it's like, what are you motivating for? Right. So it's the same thing, but I think it's really meeting people where they are, letting them know, like, I understand you. Obviously everybody has their unique um, stance, position, and reality,
Mhm.
and but meeting them where they are, and then figuring out, like, okay, where can we learn one from the other? So it was really exciting for me to see those similarities and those differences, um, really in person, and going into practices in Germany and in the Netherlands, and
Wow, that's
um,
cool.
yeah, it was a really cool experience. And then we went into ACTA, which is #1 dental school in Europe. So it was
Mm.
fascinating to kind of see what they're doing as far as innovation and so on. But it's it's just fun to see it all like in this holistic picture. So I'm thankful that I was able to have that experience. But I think that also helps kind of expand the constellations, which
Mhm.
obviously that's not always a great thing. But seeing where, even from a business to business perspective, like, how are there opportunities to really bridge people together, even globally, that they're not everywhere all over the space like I am. So I get a big spark of joy from connecting those dots for people, and really seeing, like, okay, where is this opportunity for alignment and partnership,
Mhm.
in a lot of those cases, so that we can create this groundswell. I'm a firm believer in working more collaboratively, instead of me trying to be the expert in everything. Let me find someone else that is really, this is in their strengths, this is in their zone of genius, and making sure that we've got all the right pieces and all the right people. Again, just to create that collective success.
Mhm.
I really enjoy that.
So not you taking that from that perspective of knowing kind of even I guess what it kind of comes to mind is our own limitations, right? What we think our own limitations could be and our own possibilities are when you meet a person like yourself or meet another person who's been out, who's done different things, they think differently. And what I've found is that by talking to those folks, like talking to you, it's you can walk through the strategy of because you've seen all of this, you can help people. And I've seen you do it, how you can help people have a conversation, connect them, help them understand how that connection makes sense. They could say, I really want to do this. And then all you say is, oh, all you do is da, 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 da. And all of a sudden they're connected. And it's like, what just happened? So how, I know that you help not just companies, but individuals if they have an inkling that they want to do something different, if they want to go a different direction, or even expand what they're wanting to do to help connect them to the other person, to help them understand what the potential is for them, even if they don't understand it themselves, because we have blind spots. We all have them. We literally don't know what we don't know, right? So that's why I think that everyone needs a coach. Everyone needs a mentor in what they're doing. But what are things like if a person comes to say to you, Sheena, how do I even get started with this? What's the who? What's the what? Like, what
I
are the
mean,
top three things?
I would say number one is really their positioning, right? Like, what do I want to do? What do I which is funny. I say this before. I'll add mentors have really changed my life, and being able to kind of lean in and be authentic, and hear them. Obviously, same thing. Share their vulnerabilities and their obstacles. But it's funny. Some of the most influential and successful people that I've met are still figuring out what they want to be when they grow up. So, you know,
Yes.
that is my funny thing, but it's a reality. But I think the first thing is like, okay, what do you really do more of? Like not and I'm pot calling the kettle black here because I am so guilty even for myself. I can figure this out for anybody, but not for me. But really leaning on, the what other people see, right? But the number one thing they need to figure out is like positioning. Like, what do I want to do more of? Not what can I do, but what fuels my soul? What gives me a spark of joy? If I could be successful and do just this one thing, what would that be? So I'm really kind of deciding, what do I want to do more of? And then beyond that, the second thing would be like, who do I need to connect with, right? What company, is a good, match for this? And then obviously, once you have those two pieces, how can you weave it all together? And those
Mhm.
are really your three core things. And one of the things that I enjoy doing is figuring out that strategy. Like, how can we make this fit? And, you may have two totally different, let's just use a industry supporting business and maybe someone in thought leadership or aspiring to be a thought leader, a speaker, a writer, what have you, or maybe just a more successful consultant. But it's like, well, I don't know if this is really a good fit. I'm great at kind of like, no, here is how it works together. Here is the strategy behind it and how you can work together effectively, ethically, right?
Mhm.
So that it's really a groundswell with, the clients, the thought leader, the, consultant, what have you, and the industry supporting company. So I really like painting that picture. Those are the things that kind of come natural to my brain. You can ask my assistant Danny. You give me like a normal, like mortal task, like admin something, and I will spiral. But give me something strategy, and I've got you all day long. But don't ask me to like clean up my email inbox. That is not right.
Yeah. Um,
Delegate and elevate.
yeah, delegate. Amen, sister. What I was thinking about when you said, think about what you want to do and then what lights you up, and then think about who to connect with. I think many times in that step, what I've seen is that people start to get these limiting beliefs about what's possible. They think, oh, I'm making this up, but I want to work with XYZ company. I want to do this and be a KOL there. I want to help with marketing research. And then people just go, I don't even know anybody can do that. And they make themselves small because they don't even know it's possible. It's that voice, you guys. If you're listening to this and that's you, reach out to Sheena, whoever in your network can help inspire you. There is a way to make it happen. If it's on your heart, you need to bring it to the world, right, Sheena?
Yes, absolutely. I remember I did a kind of an entrepreneurship event with Handoff at Do, and we were talking about really that journey. And I put together this graphic, and it essentially, if you think of it as a roller coaster, it doesn't matter what you do. If you are a clinician, if you are a mom, if you are whatever you're doing in life, you're going to have those days to where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really good at this, like, oh, I'm on top of the world, right? Then you're going to have where you're going back downhill and you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm ruined. I'm bad at everything, whatever. And then you're going to kind of go back up the next hill, like, okay, maybe I can do this. Maybe I can do this. And then, it's just this slow,
Yeah.
but the key is you have to have those people to remind you, hey, you're just at the bottom of that hill, right? The next one's coming. And that's what gets me through. I don't know anybody that I look up to or that I surround myself with that doesn't have some kind of doubt. So I think you hit the nail on the head. Like, just show up. And, obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it. I mean, I've had people when I was doing practice consulting years ago that would say, I want to be a consultant. And it's like, well, I mean, there's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that goes into it. But I think, that's obviously one piece of it. But at the same time, like, don't doubt yourself. You've got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of amazing people in the industry that, are looking for someone with what you do. And it's easy, I think, in this industry to look at, coaches, consultants, speakers. Well, there's already so many people that do this and that. And one of my mentors, he told me a couple of things that always, stay in my mind. One was, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Mm-hmm.
What's the worst that could happen if you go for it and it doesn't work, right? And then the other piece of that, he was like, because earlier on, I was like, well, I don't want to unintentionally like use someone else's intellectual property or, be something, that's not me. And he was like, Sheena, if you think of it like Chinese food, there are only so many ingredients that they use, right? But yet look at how many dishes, how many different restaurants. Like, even if you do the exact same thing as, a whole, host of other people, some people like your menu. They like the way you prepare it. It's so funny that I say this because I am not a cook at all. I have other things. But that was like a perfect analogy. And that was really freeing for me and empowering. Like, okay, that's right. Obviously still want to be authentic in everything that you do. But it tells me, like, don't doubt yourself and, go for it. Take the freaking shot.
Yeah. Because
you didn't do it sooner.
The other part of the roller coaster is that the difference is when you're going up and down is the momentum that you keep.
Yes.
Of moving forward, right? Even when you're down, you got to go up, but you got to keep moving to keep that momentum and get out of your head. Get out of your head because it will get stuck there. You will get stuck where you are and you're going to be in that same place. We're meant to grow. We are meant to grow in our life. And if we're not meant to stay where we were last year.
Exactly.
It doesn't mean that you have to have a different job or that your whole world needs to be like a snow globe and is floating around, but you're meant to grow. So reach out to those folks who can nurture you, who you can trust, you've built that trust with. And that you can just say, hey, tell me if this sounds crazy, just bounce it off.
That's
of somebody.
true. I'm telling you, if I hadn't had those conversations earlier on in my career, especially once I, exited or began exiting out of clinical, I would still be probably doing the same thing. Like you have to have
Mhm.
that encouragement, that community. So certainly find that, and you know, make sure that you're also surrounding yourself with people that are like-minded. Also, not just the naysayers, right? There are a lot of people that are like, oh, no, you shouldn't do that. That's such a waste. But those are not the people that you should surround yourself with.
Right.
And you should certainly aspire to never, ever, ever be the smartest person in the room.
Right.
If you are, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
And I think keeping that humble mindset will get you much, much further in life than you imagined.
Yeah. Agreed. Sheena, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, if you guys want more Sheena, her contact information is in the show notes. The show notes are the section where it's like all the words below. Her LinkedIn address and other contact information is down there. So I'm just grateful to spend this time with you.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. And I will say LinkedIn is probably the easiest way, but those inboxes get full. So if anybody reaches out with this, if you put like the start of it, Kelly Tanner podcast, that way I'll make sure to prioritize those because I get lots of fun, spam mail. But
Yes.
I'm excited to spend this time with you and
Yeah.
help other people win.
Yes, helping them win, baby, win. Well, to all the listeners, thank you for all that you're doing. And it's all the small things that you're doing every day, even the big things to help your patients win, to help yourself win. And I always ask, go on over to Apple Podcasts to give a 5-star rating. Go ahead and do it right now. Just go on to Apple, give us some love, 5-star, because Apple's the one that feeds the algorithm. And if you're watching this on YouTube, press that subscribe button now and then like it so other people who are in the algorithm will love us too. All right, my friends, we will see you next week. Sheena, thanks again. Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.